Alright guys, today I'm going to be talking about my experience with Final Fantasy VII Remake on PlayStation 5. This is a game that I knew at some point I was going to play, simply because you guys were telling me over and over and over again, rightfully so, that MBG, what's wrong with you, man? How have you not played this game? It's a must play, it's a masterpiece, it's one of the best games on PS4 or PS5. You have to play it. And my reason for not playing it, and my reason for this being my first Final Fantasy game, is pretty simple. I've always felt incredibly intimidated by this series. I've always been vaguely familiar with Final Fantasy. Obviously, I understand the importance of it and how significant it is, but it's just something I never got into over the years. And especially now, I just kind of had this feeling like, well, if I try to get into it now, you know what, we're going to be 16 games deep at this point, and I was under the belief that I was going to have to play all of those games to even remotely understand what's going on, but I learned that that's not actually the way it works at all. And people were telling me, dude, you can enjoy Final Fantasy VII Remake as it is. You really don't need to play any other games. And that made it a lot easier for me to feel confident in, oh, okay, I'm just going to dive into this and I'm just going to play it. And, you know, I will say that I expected at the very least a good game, right? Just based off of what everybody was saying, the reviews, the critical reception. I mean, everybody's been raving about this game. And so I did have a little bit of fear that, well, you know, is this going to be one of those situations where everybody made it sound like it's the greatest thing ever, maybe overhyped it a little bit, and it's not going to really, in my opinion, live up to what everybody's been telling me? Well, I'm happy to say that that's not the case with Final Fantasy VII Remake, and I know some people might be laughing because they're like, of course it's going to be one of the best games you play, but you never know with these types of things, right? I'm sure we've all had that experience where you hear people recommending something to you, saying it's so great, it's awesome, you're gonna love it, and just because they kind of, you know, propped it up so much, it ends up just kind of not really reaching that level that you expected it to. With Final Fantasy VII Remake, it absolutely did reach that level, and in some ways actually surpassed my expectations, believe it or not. I mean, where to start, right? So from the very start of the game, I already felt kind of grabbed by it because the presentation was just done so well. They kind of just throw you right into the action, and there isn't really a bunch of setup or anything like that. And I actually really did appreciate that because, again, like somebody going into this game like myself, feeling intimidated, I was a little bit nervous of, like, you know, how difficult is it going to be for me to kind of wrap my head around everything that's going on. But that's not what they did. They just throw you right in and immediately, you know, kind of introduce you to the characters and the dynamic between them. I really enjoyed the dynamic between Cloud and Barrett specifically, but with the rest of Avalanche. And I could immediately tell, like, okay, you know, there's definitely personality here. I could immediately sense that. And then the second part of it, when I first played it, was, you know, I was curious about the combat. I've never played a Final Fantasy game before, and I know that Final Fantasy VII originally was a turn-based game, and so I was really interested to see how they were going to handle it. And man, I'm going to talk about something surpassing my expectations. The combat in this game and the way they handled it, the way that they created this unique system of, you know, real-time combat where you can slow it down, and there is also some turn-based aspect to it. I thought that this was done so well, and if there's anything about this game that I think truly impresses me the most, it has to be that, because I don't think I've ever played a game like that before. And I know that there were some people who were either against this or very concerned, you know, the idea that they're going to remake Final Fantasy VII and it's going to have real-time combat and it's not going to be turn-based anymore. But I think they absolutely nailed it, and it really does add just so much depth to the overall combat, which is something that is very important to me. I remember going into this game and people were telling me, like, it's quite a long game, right? It's a JRPG. So with that in mind, I was a little bit worried, you know, is it going to get a little bit stale? Is it going to get a little bit old? And absolutely not. The fact that they implemented this system so well, and as you progress through the game, You play as different characters. You can control different characters. They have different abilities. And even if you're not directly controlling them, they are still your party members. So you have autonomy, right? You have control over what they're going to use, what special abilities, what items they're going to use. And to me, it was just so awesome because I honestly never really played anything like that before. And I've never engaged in a combat system in a game that was like this. So to me, it felt very new, very fresh, very unique, and I really enjoyed it. And also just the individual characters, Cloud, Barrett, Tifa, Aerith, they're all done perfectly where they're balanced. It doesn't really matter who you choose to play as. One doesn't necessarily feel weaker than the other. It's more about preference, whatever feels better. I mean, I always enjoy melee combat, so playing as Cloud was really fun, but I did also enjoy playing as Aerith a lot, actually, with, her being essentially like the, magic based and whatnot and using her staff. But Tifa felt awesome as well. It was a different take on melee, and Barrett, I really appreciated some of his abilities. And so in general, it was done so well, and I really just can't give enough credit to the combat, the gameplay, the systems at play here. They were done perfectly. Now, when it comes to the boss battles, this was another area of the game that I think truly elevated it. Now, the pacing of the game itself was done very, very well. I put 43 hours into this game, and there was really only, I think, 1 or 2 moments throughout that entire playtime where I felt like things were maybe dragging out just a little bit. And it was by choice. It was when it comes to the side missions. So obviously the entire game can't just be boss battle after boss battle after boss battle. I mean, I guess it can if you choose not to do any side missions, but I wanted to try to experience everything I could in the game. And, doing the VR training was cool as well. But the only time I really felt like I was having some trouble with the game was when specifically the final set of side missions you unlock, where the game kind of opens up a little bit more. It became kind of maze-like to me, and I started to get a little bit frustrated, and it just kind of created a feeling for me where I'm like, okay, I kind of just want to push past this now. But again, it's optional content. I think the side missions themselves, the side characters themselves, were actually really good and really satisfying. It was overall just kind of like the navigation. And so I'm going to be interested to see how they maybe change that up a little bit with Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, because if I'm not mistaken, they made it sound like they're going to kind of open it up even more, and they're going to be like, bigger areas and whatnot. So that should be interesting. But I did play all of the side missions, and I think that they were woven in really well. I think that just having these different moments kind of laced throughout the story, where there are bigger moments, bigger boss battles, and then things kind of simmer down a little bit. You start, getting more dialogue between the characters. There are just quiet moments. I think that while maybe some people don't enjoy that aspect of some games, and they do feel like it can just feel like maybe a little extra padding or unnecessary, I think that's something I really enjoyed, and I think it just made the experience more memorable. It made it feel like there's just more here, and I actually have to kind of attribute that to just the overall direction of the story and the writing of the characters. Because if I wasn't interested in the characters themselves, and I wasn't interested in the dynamics between them, I probably wouldn't have cared nearly as much, and it would have felt like, okay, let's just kind of get through this. But again, everything about this game, it just really kind of nails everything on all fronts. It fires on all cylinders. And getting back to the boss battles here, some of the most epic boss battles obviously came towards the end of the game, and they were awesome. It was really cool. I think the fight with Rufus, I thought that was a pretty epic battle. But also Sephiroth, that was the one we were building up to. I felt like it was very satisfying, kind of having that big battle even before Sephiroth. I forget the name of the entity, but it just kind of, it went on and on and on. And I know that sounds like a bad thing, but it actually wasn't. Like, it kept kind of ramping up more and more and more. And I started to think like, like, is this going to kind of not live up to the hype, I guess you could say, right? But no, it executed it perfectly, where everything felt satisfactory to me. And that's a big deal, because when you're playing a game that's this long and you have so many boss battles, and you know, you feel like you keep climbing and climbing and climbing, and you keep going and going and going. I feel like a lot of times you can kind of see with some games where it just kind of starts to fall apart towards the end, and that was actually a fear I had when playing this, with just how much was going on, and just kind of wondering, like, is it all going to come together? And I wasn't expecting to get all the answers, obviously, but I feel like they did it really well, where I didn't get all the answers, but the conclusion was satisfying enough to where it's like, yeah, I'm still kind of left on the edge of my seat. Can't wait to play the next game. I know it has to be that way, but the finale was ultimately satisfying. I didn't feel like it was like, oh man, that was too drawn out, or it just wasn't enough, or whatever. Felt like it had that kind of perfect balance, and I felt the need to say that because, again, I've experienced many games where that's just simply not the case. So the boss battles were awesome. I also have to give a shout out to that one boss battle. I think it was called the Hell House, and that was, wow, I didn't see that coming. That was actually the first boss battle I played where this was really challenging. Like, it actually kind of tested me, and it was just so bizarre. I'm like, what is this house I'm fighting? I mean, just when I thought this game couldn't get any better, I'm fighting a living house. That was awesome. But I also found out, and this made it just so much funnier to me, was apparently in the original game, that was just kind of a little side thing you can do, and it was meant to be kind of funny, and it was like a really easy battle. And in this game, they're like, you know what? No, we're going to make it a whole big thing. It's going to be a proper boss battle. I think that's awesome, and I think it's just really cool that they're willing to make those types of changes, and I think the game ultimately is better for it, right? So, talking about, you know, the story beats in particular, I mean, it's really difficult to feel like I have a firm grasp on what's going on, simply because there's still so much in the air, right? There are still so many questions that are left unanswered, and that's one thing about the ending that was intriguing to me, which is, yeah, I felt like I maybe got one answer here, another answer there for some basic stuff, but then they kind of throw more stuff in the mix, which presents like 3 to 4 more questions, right? So it's I'll say this about the story. There was never a time throughout my experience playing this game where I felt like, okay, like let me get to the boss battle, you know, let me skip this cutscene. I wish I could skip this cutscene, or I don't care about this dialogue. Every character, I don't want to say every single piece of dialogue, because there's definitely some dialogue that's a little bit cheesy, a little bit corny, but I feel like that's, like, to me, it felt like that was almost intentional. Like, that is kind of the charm of it. Like, I kept finding it pretty funny how all throughout the game, multiple characters keep calling Cloud bro, and Cloud just over and over again is like, stop calling me bro. Stop calling me that. I don't like you calling me that. And I just thought that it was so bizarre and strange, because, like, it's never explained why he's so bothered by being called bro, and yet it's something we continually hear him say throughout the game. And it's stuff like that that I think really just, it adds a certain charm to the game, because there are these moments where things are meant to be very serious, and you are taking them very serious. But some of the other moments as well, like when you find out that Aerith is an ancient, and the potential implications of that, and what Shinra's trying to achieve, and how Shinra's going to drop the plate and all that. You know, these are moments that really did make me feel like I need to know, like, what's going to happen next. And I love that in games. I feel like that is the essence of storytelling, of good storytelling and good single player games, where when you just have this kind of urge, like, you really want to progress, and it adds just so much more to each battle, to each fight, where, you know, you have more to gain from winning this fight than just, I beat you, right, and I win. No, I beat you and I win, and now I get to see what happens next and learn more about what's going on. And yeah, it was awesome. You know, it was overall an awesome experience. And what's funny is a lot of people were eager or curious on my reaction or my thoughts on the Honeybee Inn and that portion of the game. And I will tell you, it certainly caught me off guard, because it was just so unexpected. But at the same time, it's like, in a way, I could kind of see this happening, right? Like, it's not that surprising. For as unexpected as it was, it also is like, yeah, yeah, this fits within the game, and it again, it kind of adds a certain charm to it. I just love the fact that with this game, it can be so serious one moment, and then the next, it's just completely ridiculous and having fun. And I like it, you know, I like it because I feel like Final Fantasy VII, something that makes it feel like the complete package, even though this is apparently just like one portion, right, of the original game. It feels like such a complete package because it just takes you through every emotion, right? You have the highs, you have the lows, you have everything in between. There are times where you feel sad. There are times where you feel, you know, like you just can't stop laughing. There are times where you're feeling very serious, like you really want to kind of focus. And I just like that. I like that in a game because I feel like that's a sign that it's a very robust and complete game, a diverse game, something that offers an experience that kind of covers the whole spectrum, right? And to me, that's what Final Fantasy VII Remake is. And I guess I also want to say real quick too is how awesome the summons are. And I never really knew that about Final Fantasy. Like, I just wasn't familiar with the summon system, and that added a really cool aspect to the game as well, where I noticed as I was, you know, getting deeper into the game, I'm like 15, 20 hours in, like, there are just new things I'm discovering, right? New weapons, new abilities, things I didn't realize I could do, and it's awesome. I love those types of experiences. And so, yeah, I mean, maybe it wasn't the most in-depth review, but this was just kind of what I wanted to do. I wanted to turn on my microphone and talk to you guys about my experience with Final Fantasy VII Remake after playing it. Oh, and I did play the Yuffie DLC as well, and I did complete that, and that was really good too. It was a solid chunk of content that adds, I think, another layer to Final Fantasy VII Remake. I will admit it didn't really capture me, like Yuffie as a character, and Sonon, I think his name is. They didn't really capture me as much as, you know, the main characters of the game, but for what it was enjoyable, and I did really enjoy Yuffie's moveset, actually, and her abilities and some of the boss battles, so that was really cool with the DLC, and definitely worth playing. And so there you go. Those are my thoughts on Final Fantasy VII Remake. Really glad I listened to you guys and played it. At this point, I am looking forward to Final Fantasy 16, and obviously I'm very much looking forward to Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. Two games that were definitely on my radar, but I couldn't honestly say that I was overly excited for them. But now, yeah, they are day one games for me. So be sure to leave your thoughts down in the comments below. I'll be interested to see what you guys have to say based on what I'm saying about Final Fantasy here. And leave the video a like if you enjoyed it. If you want more game reviews and stuff like this, make sure you leave the video a like. Really helps it out, lets me know you like the content. Subscribe if you're new, hit the bell notification icon, and feel free to share the video out on top of all that. But until next time, guys, take care.